Welcome to Limitless Living Into the Mindset, the podcast that dives into the heart of growth, grit, and what it really means to keep moving forward. Mindy, first podcast. We're super excited to have you here and super excited to hear about your story. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Well, I'm excited to be here. However, not quite as excited about being the first person. So I'm Mindy Hutson. Been in Lebanon for about 20 years now, but actually was born here. So kind of a native, but moved away for a little while and love it here. And I'm glad to be a part of this. Hopefully I can maybe encourage somebody and share something that might make someone mad. I don't know, just something entertaining.
I'm sure something will happen along the way.
Right.
Yeah, either we'll change a life in the best way or the worst way, but something will be good.
Yes, hopefully.
So you mentioned you were born here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of your upbringing and how that was here in Lebanon?
So I only lived here till I was 5 years old and then moved to California. And I was raised in California.
Okay, that explains a lot.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You get it now. Raised in California for all my school years and moved back. I was 23 when I came back here moved with my second husband and had my first child with me. He was just a few months old. So that's when I came back here, and I've been here ever since.
So you met first husband in California?
Yes.
Okay, when did you guys meet? Was that high school or?
Oh, no. That was after high school I was in my rebellious stage and having more fun than I should have. Met him, married him. Great guy. Have nothing bad to say about him, but I was young and not the brightest. So went on to divorce him and marry his best friend.
From there, and that's who you're with now?
No.
Oh, okay. So we're going to continue that story.
So I was married to my second husband for about 4 years. We were separated, had two children, 16 months old and 4 years old. And he went back to California. And on Christmas, I got a phone call from the hospital that he had tried to take his life. And he was on life support. Christmas 2008. We'll just get right into it.
Yeah, we're going right for it.
Right for it. So after that, a few years after that, I married my current husband, Travis.
Okay, so we're going to have to backtrack a little bit.
Do you think?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Need the backstory.
So the phone call, when you got the phone call,
Yeah.
what kind of happened after that? What was going through your mind? How did all that kind of...
That was the days when you had caller ID on your home phone. And so you see this hospital phone number. So immediately I'm like, oh, great. What did he do? Never expecting what they said. And we were separated, but I was still legally married. So that meant all legal rights went to me. No one could sign the paperwork but me.
Okay.
So the day after Christmas, I flew to California to sign the paperwork to have him removed off of all life support. There was no brain function, nothing stating that he would ever be normal again.
And so for him, was he struggling with something? What was kind of the reasoning behind? Did he have some type of addiction? What was some of the reasons for that kind of
Action.
behavior? Yeah.
Long-term alcoholic, drug addict, very abusive marriage, which is why I got out of it. Just probably in a really deep depression. I didn't have a lot of contact with him after he left, but it was only a few weeks that he was there before that happened. So, he was an alcoholic and a drug addict when I met him. Again, I was young and not the brightest and made some bad choices, but he really, truly had a good heart. He just was trapped in a bad spiral.
Yeah. And I think we all know somebody who's been in that situation, tried to help somebody out of that situation. And we know it's a lot harder than what you think to pull somebody out of that. But I wanted to kind of go back because I think it's something really important to hit on. You mentioned it was kind of an abusive relationship.
Yes.
We also know female and some males that have gone through relationships like that. How did you kind of get out of that? Because I think that's a big struggle for a lot of women that are kind of trapped in relationships like that, of not really having the ability to get out or not thinking they have the ability to get out. So kind of what was that process like for you and how you kind of went through that journey?
I think that for the first part of our relationship, I was very insecure and he was very manipulative to keep me there. Towards the end of our relationship, I kind of had gotten some self-confidence, some motivation to take better care of myself. I had 2 children, so I didn't really have a choice. Like, you got to make sure you're taking care of your kids. He always provided financially, but not in any other way. So allowing myself to just become a better person for me, not for anybody else. Once I built up that self-confidence, I was able to get out of that situation. Not easily, though. You know, it was a process, and I had left many times before the final time. And I think that's the case with most people that are in an abusive situation. You leave, and then they promise everything's going to be okay, and then you go back, and it's not. So the last time I knew I was done, and he knew I was done too, which I think led to a lot of his depression. He was not happy with that choice. He thought I would just come back like I always had, and I didn't. I finally had the courage to not go back.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't matter what anyone says to you when you're in that situation, whether you're the addict or you're the being abused or whatever it is. No one can really pull you out of it. You have to find it within yourself. And if you can't find it within yourself, unfortunately, you normally just stay.
That's right.
Yeah. You know? And I think it's a lot of people look at that as sometimes being selfish. And I think it's just a horrible way of looking at it. It's, like you said, it's self-care, but you had to kind of you had to self-motivate. You had to be the one to make that decision. It's not a selfish decision. You were doing it for your kids and for you, yes, but really in the long term, it was betterment for your kids and for your overall life. So,
yeah, that whole theory has played out multiple times in my life, that if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't take any care of anyone else. Yeah. And it's not selfish, because if you're taking care of yourself, everything flows from it. Mm-hmm. If you're not getting enough rest, if you're not healthy enough, if you're not eating right, doing all the things you need to do, you can't function at 100% to take care of the other things that need to be taken care of. Right.
Now, you know, I lost somebody very dear to my heart by suicide. And then a family member of mine just recently lost somebody really close to him through suicide as well. I remember with my story, I remember walking out of the hospital that day. He had just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I remember walking out of the hospital that day and just thinking in the back of my mind, I need to tell the nurse to check on him. And I went to the nurse's station. There wasn't a nurse there and everything. I was like, I'm being crazy. And I left. And then, you know, my wife went later. A few of our other friends went later. They saw him and everything like that. And then we got the call that night that he took his own life. So there was a moment there where I had that guilt that could I have done more? If I would have went and searched for a nurse that said, please continue to check on him, please continue to do this, would have been, that's just not the life that's not the mindset we need to be in. That's not how it needs to be. And I know my family member who just also is currently going through that. I'm sure that there's some, what if I did this? What if I did that? Was that something that you kind of went through? Did you go through a little bit of guilt where it's like, well, I should have just went back to him. Maybe I could have made it work. Maybe I should have tried harder.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that was something that haunted me probably for a good year and a half, 2 years. You know, you'd have the nightmares of, you know, things were different, or maybe he really wasn't gone, or, you know, just all these different confusing thoughts that would come to mind. And if I would have said, you can come back, if I wouldn't have moved out, all of those things, so you get yourself into a hole with those all the time. And yeah, I definitely went through that. His boss at the time, he had kind of bailed and just left, and his boss had talked to me, and the day before, he had called his boss and asked for his job back, and his boss said, I don't have time to talk to you. And of course, that just ate him up, because if he would have said, yes, you could have your job back, maybe that wouldn't have happened, you know? Yeah. So I still kind of have a bond with his old boss that, you know, he went through a hard time too, dealing with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that guilt is, especially with something like that, that's a hard thing to overcome. How did you kind of get out of that?
Lots of time, and just doing the right thing day after day. talking to people that would help me to realize it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
And lots of prayer to get out of it.
Yeah.
Did you have family member support back here as well?
I did. My family here was really great to support me in anything I needed. You don't think about all the things you have to deal with.
Right.
At that time when he passed away, we had 2 homes. I was living in one and he was living in one. So 2 mortgages, car payments, all of the regular things, plus 2 kids to take care of. And my family was there for anything that I needed and anything our kids needed to help us get through it.
That's good. I think a good support system is key, but a lot of people think because sometimes they don't have that direct family or maybe they're living in a different state, they don't have family nearby, that they don't have that. But a lot of times friends and even coworkers feel like family that you kind of lean on as well. You had, I know you mentioned you had the boys and everything like that. And how was that process, kind of taking care of them throughout the whole ordeal? Did you kind of shadow them away from it a little bit, or were you kind of upfront and like open with them about certain things? They were probably pretty little at the time. So.
Yeah. My oldest was 4, and then the youngest was 16 months old, which the 16-month-old doesn't remember him at all.
Right.
And Travis is his dad. He's always been his dad.
Yeah.
But the 4-year-old, he definitely had some questions. Where did he go? What happened to him? And, you don't want to tell them details and stuff like that. So you just, he went to sleep and he's in a better place.
Yeah.
And you just leave it at that. And then he told me, and I don't remember the details of it, but he told me that he said that God came into his room and told him that his dad was dead and that it was okay. And of course I was like, who told you? Really confused about it. But it was like God protected him in that time. And in that time, I didn't really have a strong faith at all. I knew who God was, but I was not a real faithful person. So it was difficult, but kids are resilient. They come back from that stuff really quickly, I feel like. And their mind doesn't have time to wander. It just says, okay, this is what it is. And they take it for what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned, God came into his room and told him his dad was dead, because I remember having a lot of conversations after our friend took his life with, I grew up in church. I grew up hearing, this is what you are supposed to do, this is what you aren't supposed to do stuff and everything. And you had a very, straightforward view on what the Christian faith was and everything. And so me thinking, he took his own life. We're not supposed to do that, and talking to a lot of pastors and things and really getting different perspectives on, yes, that happened, but we have to remember that, God is all powerful. God is the final judgment. We have to, as believers, believe that, they're a good person and they're possibly in that better place. But it was very hard for me to grasp that, because I'm like, no, that you're not supposed to do that. Is that something you kind of went through as well?
Oh yeah. And it's so controversial. Like I can argue it either way. And my final resolution with that was, the Bible promises us that when we get to heaven, there will be no sorrow, which just makes my heart ache, because if he's not there, I won't know.
Yeah.
But if he is, I'll rejoice. So regardless of anyone who takes their own life, we aren't the judge.
Yeah.
But when we get there, God will not allow us to have sorrow anymore.
That was like one of the most beautiful dark things I've heard. Because it's true. It's like,
but it
so
helps you to
sad, because
understand.
you're like, I'm not even gonna know. But then at the same time, it is. I mean, that's how cool our heaven is and everything and what we believe in. So it is unique in that way. But yeah, very beautifully dark.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, that was something I struggled with for a long time, and just really understanding. And I'm an adult going, well, I was in my 20s, so I don't know how much of an adult.
Are you an adult
but
now?
I don't even know if I'm an adult now. Yeah, but it was something I struggled with for a long time, and I just kind of took it. Well, I mean, it's kind of why we're here. I've always been very curious, and so when I have questions, I just start asking people. So that's what I started doing. And I got a lot of different perspectives on that and viewpoints on that. And that was kind of the general consensus was, we kind of have to just believe that they're there, but we're honestly never really going to know. But we just kind of have faith that, God is the ultimate judgment. So we're sitting here talking about faith.
Yes.
And everything. So we'll kind of get into that. So growing up, did you go to church? Did you have was your family
We were kind of Catholic.
Catholic?
Yeah. Like I remember going some as a kid, but I did not care for it. I didn't want to have anything to do with religion. I think just a rebellious kid in general when that came to that. But we weren't really dedicated ever. And my young adult years, kind of the same thing, kind of bouncing in and out of church here and there. But really not until later in life did I come to really know who Jesus was.
Yeah. And what kind of started that whole process of you really finding your faith?
I have a really pushy uncle and a pushy aunt. I love them both, but it was just kind of a very pushy encouragement to go to church and learn about God and learn about Jesus and that he died for you. And I'll never forget the service. I'm thankful for that church service when God got a hold of me and truly broke me down. And that was the day that, you feel like everything's going to be better and everything's going to change. Well, it doesn't happen like that. Like your heart's different, but things still have to change. So that was in 2010 that happened. And really wasn't that long ago, 15 years. So, but yeah, that's when it all happened and when it changed and slowly started to turn my life around.
And you were with your now husband at that time.
Oh, yeah. We were living in sin, living together, but we were not married. So actually later that year, October 2010, we got married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that a lot? How long did you guys live together before you got married?
Oh, probably a year or so.
Year or so? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because,
remember.
I'll just get into my story a little bit. I mean, my now wife and I, we were together for like 12 years before we got married. And it was actually, I grew up in the church and everything. And then I saw a lot of the bad that a lot of people see within churches and within the organization itself, not the faith, but within just the organization of the church. And I was just like, I'm just going to stop going. Well, when you stop doing that, that's when the devil's kind of like, I could start getting little things,
right.
Opens that door a little bit and getting, little bits and pieces in there and everything and stuff like that. And, so I just never thought of it as like a sin. And at that time, I'm like, we're living together. We love each other. We had 2 kids together during that time. Like, it's fine. Like, we're going to be together. It's no big deal. It wasn't until we got back into church that one day we probably been going for about a year and a half. And she kind of looked over at me and she was like, I just really feel like that conviction and just think like we need to get married. And so a couple weeks later we signed the papers and it was so weird.
Yeah.
Because we didn't do a ceremony. We didn't do anything like that. I'm like,
You wake up
why
next
is
day,
this
it's all
like
the same except for the signature on the paperwork.
Yeah, it's like, why is the signature on the paperwork? Like, all of a sudden I could go to heaven now,
Right.
or something like that. But I say that jokingly, but it was crazy. We signed the papers. The next day I wake up and it felt weird, but it felt like it is a good weird.
Well,
It
it
is
should be.
better.
Right.
Like you actually felt something different. And that kind of shocked me a little bit because I was like, I've lived with this person for all these years. Why is this so weird? But, it was cool. So I'm glad that, you guys ultimately got married because he's awesome.
Thanks for that, aunt
He
and
is
uncle.
pretty awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks to the aunt and uncle and everything. And then, so were they going to the church that you ultimately started working at, or?
So I started attending a different church in town for a while with my previous husband. And then when he passed, I continued to go there with my pushy aunt and
Okay.
Travis. So we went there for a little while. And then we ended up moving to a different church that had just started.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's the church I ended up working for.
Ended up working at. So how do we go from working at a church where you have, it's a church, so I'm not going to say it's super like stable income and things like that, but you know that you're getting a check, you're getting paid and everything, to wanting to start your own business?
The biggest thing for me is it's never about money. God's going to provide you with what you need. We get used to what we make and we spend what we make. And if you have more, you spend more. And if you have less, you spend less. It's just the way it is. It's the way it's always been in my life. Money's never been an issue. Not that we haven't struggled, but it's just not ever been the main focus. The main focus is about life and about relationship, not about money. Yeah. So when you get into any position at work where you're uncomfortable or things have changed and you're not wanting to be there any longer, you really need to weigh what's important to you. And if it's the money, go ahead and stay and deal with whatever chaos you are confronted with. But if it's your life and your health and your family and your relationship, not just with your family, but your relationship with God, then it's time for you to really focus on that. And that was where I was at. Things had changed and I was not changing in the same way. So it was time to take a different path. And I prayed for months and months and months. And I remember one of my boys said to me, I had started cross-stitching, the old school, old lady cross-stitching. And they said they thought something was really wrong because I was just like sitting on the couch cross-stitching. And I said, that was my time to just slow myself down, to really try and figure out what I needed to do in my life and where I needed to go. We had some really good friends that we talked with about it for a long time. And it helped. It helped to talk it out. It helped to have people around you that weren't afraid either, and then make the jump. And really, truly, I mean, I heard this from a person I don't get along with anymore, but the idea is still good, even though I don't care for the person. You are told that, you have these decisions to make and there's a higher path to take. But ultimately, whether you choose path A or B, God's going to bless you in it if you're still obedient to him. So you just got to pick a path and go and be obedient to God, and he'll continue to bless you. And that's the truth. And even though I don't have a steady income, it is amazing to see God provide work when I really need it. And then when it's the first week of summer, for my schedule to be pretty open, which is great. Yeah. But he's provided me with enough work earlier in the month that I don't have to worry about it. My husband still has a steady paycheck, so we're not, solely focused on mine. But it has worked out, and I don't know how. It's been, I do know how. It's totally God making it work. And it's been 3.5 years that I have been on my own doing this. I took 3 months off when I needed to for my kids. So
which we'll get into that here in a second. But I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people, when they have dreams, they have these ambitions or these goals, but it's that risk, that little bit of fear that always kind of creeps in. How did you kind of overcome that? I know you talk about prayer and stuff like that. Was there, you mentioned some of the self-motivation and self-talk and stuff earlier in your life. Did a lot of that kind of play into it as well? Like, I got this, we'll figure it out, we could do this. Like, confident in because you own Wildflower Baking.
Correct.
So
the biggest thing was, worst case scenario. Okay. So if you and your spouse are trying to make a decision, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I quit my job. I start a bakery. We don't make it. I go back to work. Yeah. It's the worst thing that's going to happen. Right. Not really. You could lose your house. You could lose your cars. There's more things that can happen, but you can prevent those things. Yeah. If you get in a situation where you don't feel like you're making enough money at home, then go back to a full-time job where you're out of the house and make more money. So there's generally an out when you come to something like that. And I think just trusting that, again, pick a path, go, and God's going to bless you in it. And if things get a little chaotic, you can either stay in it or you can choose to go a different route.
Yeah. It's basically taking that first step and then looking for the guidance from God to, continue on.
Yeah, for sure.
So the little chaotic, let's talk about that. So had you started Wildflower Baking already?
Yeah. So I started, officially April of 22 is when I launched my logo, but I had been baking since February-ish. So 22 was when I started baking. And then in September of 23 was when the chaos hit.
The chaos hit. So that's when your son, JJ, was in his car accident.
Correct. Yep. September 17th of 2023 was the night that he wrecked his car.
So did you get another phone call that night?
Yes. So this is so crazy. So earlier, just like an hour earlier, JJ had called me. He was hanging out with my nephew at my brother's house, and he's like, "Hey, can I stay out later?" I'm like, "No, it's a school night. You need to be home. You're coming home, whatever time it was. I don't remember now. Little things don't matter as much anymore." But anyway, I said, "You're coming home when you're supposed to be." Well, then a little while later, I get a call from my nephew, and I'm like, this kid, they're trying to get to stay out later. Like, this is ridiculous. So I answer the phone, and he says, "Hey, Auntie, JJ wrecked his car. He's stuck in a tree." And I'm like, listen, he needs to be home. He's not staying out later. So I completely just didn't believe him. And he's a joker anyway. He's always messing around. Like, this kid puts me in a headlock after football games. Like, this is just the relationship we have. So he got really serious, and I could tell the change in his voice. And he's like, "No, I'm not kidding. Like, I need you here now." So, it's throw a sweatshirt on, get Travis, I called my older son, and he was in town, and I said, "Hey, your brother's been in a car wreck. I need you to get to him right now," because I wanted somebody to be with him. I didn't know what was going on. Called my nephew back. By that time, he had busted the back window out, and JJ was talking to him, so I could talk to JJ on the phone. And he says, "Mom, am I in trouble?" I'm like,
any
well,
16-year-old kid would. Yeah,
Right.
I remember my first wreck, and that's
yeah.
the first thing. I was like, "Mom, I'm so sorry."
And I'm like, well, we can talk about that later, but I'm glad that you're talking to me and that you're okay. So anyway, we got there very quickly, and his car was stuck in a tree. He was able to talk to us. He was moving his head all around, which later we figured out wasn't great, but there was nothing like gory or anything that looked like something was really wrong. He just looked like he was pinned in a car. So EMS, all the crews came, the helicopter landed in the field, and some families showed up. I called our pastor to let him know what was going on. I called my mom to come get my daughter. Like, there was just lots of working little things. And not the first time I've been faced with a situation like that, where this switch just flips, and it's like, take care of everything. And, XYZ needs to be done, do this. And normally they keep everyone pretty far away from the scene as they're using the jaws of life to cut a 16-year-old out of the car. And they allowed me to sit on the back of the fire truck right where he was at and watch the whole thing. And one of them stood with me most of the time. And I remember one of the ladies making a comment about, "You're pretty calm." And I'm like, there's not really a good option here. Like, I mean, what's it going to do if I'm not calm? It's not going to help anything. So 2.5 hours later, they got him out of the car and put him on a stretcher. And, they warned me. They said, when we get him out, he's been crushed for a while. We don't know what's going to happen. Like, we could release the car and he can bleed to death. Like, we just don't know what's going to happen. I said, okay, like, we're prepared for anything. And, it was in that moment, you just, "Hey, God, I need you. Like, nothing else can come out, but I need you to take care of my kid right now."
Yeah.
And when they put him on that stretcher and brought him over to the road, he was talking. He was fine. He had a little blood on his arms, but nothing major. His clothes weren't torn. Everything looked okay. It looked like maybe his ankle was broken. It was kind of laid funny, but he looked fine.
Yeah.
So they airlifted him to Springfield. We went and got some clothes, headed to Springfield, get to the ER. They say, "Come back here in this little room with us." And so we go back in this little room, and doctor comes in with the chaplain, which never seems good, right? Like, what are you going to tell me? And then they tell us that he has broke his neck and he will be a quadriplegic for life. And when he said that to me, my immediate thought is, what is a quadriplegic? Like, it didn't register with me. What is that, And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "He'll never move again from the neck down." And I said, "Is that indefinite, or is that just, like, is he going to recover from this?" And he said, "No, it's indefinite. He'll never move again." Okay. Wow. Well, of course, that's when I lost it. That's when you have all these emotions and you start crying, and then you have to get it together because you have to go to the room to tell your kid.
Yeah.
And JJ kept his eyes closed, and he just said, "Okay." I said, "Do you understand?" He said, "Yep." Wow. And he was mad. He was so mad. And then they put him in ICU. The break in his neck, they didn't have to do immediate surgery. They were kind of letting the swelling go down and waiting before they did the surgery. And by the next day, he was moving his arms. And we're like, that guy was wrong. You know,
Yeah,
so it's just, we saw God move from the everything like that.
Yeah.
This is crazy too. That afternoon I there was a ladybug on my pants, and I had sent a picture to a friend of mine, and I'm like, look, it must mean I'm going to have good luck today. And then that night my kid gets in a wreck. Right. So you would think I would despise ladybugs now, but honestly, I feel like that ladybug was saying, not that I'm like super superstitious, but God took care of my kid, and I was lucky that he did. You know, I was lucky that he's still alive. So we saw him move the whole time. That he shouldn't have been. When they pulled him out of the car, they're like, we have seen people not make it out of situations a whole lot easier than this. You know?
I mean, I've seen photos of the car and everything. I think the first time we saw it, we really didn't know much information yet. We just saw the photo of it, and we didn't really know. All we knew was you guys were at the hospital with them. And so I just remember looking at my wife and being like, this can't be good.
Yeah.
Just by how the car looked. And so to hear that, not great news, but to hear that he was still alive was powerful, because I'm like, not very many people are walking away from that.
And to tell people, like, you feel weird to say he only broke his neck, because that's a big deal. Like, he is paralyzed, but he only broke his neck. You know, there's not internal damage. He didn't die. Like, there's so many other things that could have happened. And that was it. Yeah. Some scrapes and, you know, bruises.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it was part of that Will Christian football program that just, toughened him up. So he's able to.
I think he'd thank Coach Wade for all the track workouts too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. No, and that's, so you started the business at this time. This happens. Now, I know, as somebody who has started business, owns a business, works as an independent contractor, I like the freedom of, hey, today my kid has a Christmas program, so I'm going to go watch him. My son has a basketball game, so I'm going to go do that. Did you feel pretty blessed in that moment that you were like, I can take this time off? Because you guys ultimately ended up going to a facility out in Colorado.
Yes.
I believe, for therapy and rehab and everything that goes along with that. Were you happy that you got that time to be able to go out there? And
all of my customers were so understanding. You know, I just started messaging people like, hey, I don't know how long I'm going to be off, but I'm going to take a break. Posted on my Facebook page, like, just taking a break for a while. And like September 18th, I messaged everyone, and I didn't go back to work till January 1st.
Wow.
So, and again, trusting that God was going to take care of us. You know, the finances would be okay. Our community supported us tremendously. Like, they sent cards and letters, and the school district, that some of his classes would send boxes of letters and cards that the kids had made. And financially, I had a Venmo account that was linked to my business, and people were just contributions coming in all the time. And our bills were never late. Everything was taken care of. Our expenses that we had in Colorado were taken care of. A friend of ours that felt like they needed to bring me my car, loaded up my car from my house, and drove there, dropped it off to me, and drove home the same day. It's a 12-hour drive. And I'll never forget walking up the road in the snow and seeing him undoing my car on the trailer. That was probably the biggest act of kindness that I've ever had in my life. I was walking back and forth in the snow, and a lot of people didn't know that, but it didn't matter. My kid needed me. I was staying down the road. I had to get there. So you just get there.
Yeah.
And the community was huge in everything they did for us. It was great.
So, I don't know a whole bunch about JJ. I know a little bit. And I hear from the kids that he goes to school with and stuff like that. And first off, a lot of what I get is the kid's just funny. He just has that personality that he's a little smart sometimes, a
little.
But
it's not inherited either.
Yeah. But, I get that the kid's he's just kind of a bright light with it and everything. So he's going through this very dark time in his life. How is he dealing with it during the rehab and everything?
Probably 98% of the time he's in a good mood. he has bad days just like everybody.
Yeah.
But he's in a good mood and he's laughing and joking about it. Just the other day, we ran into a doctor that we know, and he's talking to him and telling him he's starting to drive again. And he said, well, you weren't very good at that before. And JJ goes, obviously. Like, he's in a wheelchair. Obviously, he wasn't going to drive in. But he does make a lot of jokes about it. And I think that helps people to understand, maybe have a little bit lighter heart with it.
Yeah.
The thing he has the biggest problem with is when people baby him, because his brain still works perfectly fine, sometimes overworks, but he's still just a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah. I grew up with one of my best friends growing up. He's in a wheelchair, pretty much his whole life as well. And that was something he always kind of talked about, was just treat me normal. He has I hate that I'm saying this on a podcast because he's going to be like, you think I'm smart later, but he does. He has a high IQ. He's very smart. He's very intelligent and everything. Just because he's in a wheelchair doesn't mean, he's not. But he was like, I always hate when people, treat me like I'm completely different, stuff like that. And so our small group of friends, we treated him like he was one of us. And so we were shooting him with paintball guns, and shooting fireworks off at him, and, treating him just like he treated any of us and stuff and everything. And now whenever I say something to him and somebody else is around, they're usually like, you can't say that to him. Like, I'll go to run somewhere. I'm like, come on, keep up. And, they're like, dude, you can't say that to him. Or, just asking him hey, you want to go for a run? Oh, stop it. And he's like, no, that's what I want.
Yeah.
He goes, people think that I don't know I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah. The normalcy of it.
Yeah.
And I think the resilience of sports, I feel like sometimes also helps you, to have the drive even to want to always be better, to heal, to, and just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I know that he was at a football practice last year, and one of the coaches said, if you don't stop goofing off, I'm going to put you on the run list. And of course, the entire team laughed because, and he didn't even think about it. It's just the discipline you get if you're goofing off is the run list. So, I know he was drawing some interesting things on the football field with his wheelchair tires. So, being a kid.
I heard about that too as well. I have to pause for a moment and be like, dude, first podcast and you had to put a Joe Dirt reference in there.
I did not catch it.
Come on, man. Keep on keeping on.
Oh, keep on keeping on. I got it now.
First one, had to get Joe Dirt reference in there.
Yeah, you gotta bring
Great job, Darren.
You gotta shine when you can shine.
Yeah. So he goes through all that. You guys go through all that. You start baking again. Where are things at now with Wildflower Baking?
They're right back to where they were. It's again, God just provides when I need work and when I don't. JJ started driving school for the summer twice a week in Springfield. So it's, a little bit of an outing every couple days, and I don't have to work if I don't need to, and I can work my orders around his schedule. And, we've got another little girl that she's in summer school, and I've got to work it around her schedule. So it just works well, and I'm thankful for it.
I think that's something important to, especially moms right now, or families in general. If you guys, if they don't understand what owning a business is like, or being an entrepreneur, being self-employed, that's part of one of the freedoms with it is, yes, if you're not working, you're probably not making money, but you have the opportunity to work really hard these days so that you can be there on the important days.
Right.
Sometimes we get so caught up in the rat race that we're missing out on a lot of big opportunities with our kids. We only get, a few years with them where they're right here. Eventually, they're going to go somewhere. Your daughter went all the way to Hawaii for a while.
Right.
You have a son down in Florida. They go and they leave, and we only have them for a short period of time. Some days it feels very long.
I agree.
Depending on how they're acting. But in the grand scheme of things, it's very little bit of time. And so having that ability to be able to say, you know what, today I'm just not going to work. I'm going to go and enjoy the day with you, or go and watch you do this, or be with you as you're doing that, that's one of the freedoms. And the reason why I tell people all the time, like, look, if you have an idea, go for it.
Yeah.
If you think it's something, or you have a team of people or a community around you that's like, you should do this, go do it. Go give it a shot. Because like you said, the worst thing that could happen is it doesn't work out, or you get told no.
Right.
And then
You just
it's
go
fine.
do something
You just
else.
go do something else and go
I think
on.
people really worry about what everyone's going to think or what everyone's going to say about what they're doing. And we worry about that stuff way too much.
Yeah.
Once you've been through a lot of the experiences that I've had, you really don't care a lot about that stuff. You don't need to be anyone else's standard. You need to set your own standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I mean,
exactly right.
I know I went through that with this podcast because Mara asked me a couple days ago, she was like, you know, how are you feeling? Are you kind of nervous about it and stuff? And I was like, I am. I'm a little nervous about it. I'm good with conversations with people and everything. That part I'm fine with. So the thing I'm nervous about is that I'm going to be in front of like a lot of people, and I'm just kind of putting myself out there and stuff. And I'm sure with anything, you know, any video, there's going to be the negative comments and things like that. I'm actually kind of looking forward to that part.
They're
honestly.
entertaining.
Yeah, they're more entertaining than anything. But it was just one of those things where it's like, no, I want to do this. I think it'd be something really cool. We live in a community of a lot of people that have done some pretty cool things, that have been through some pretty incredible things. I mean, just everything that you've talked about today. But I'm like, this is something we need to do. And we can start out in our community. If it goes from there, great. But I know that there are a lot of cool stories of this community, and my natural just curiosity of getting to know people and how they think and, you know, what their mindset is and how they go through things was why I wanted to do it. So that was kind of my like, oh, worst case scenario is it bombs and, you know, I just go back to work the next day, and it is what it is. You know, people will laugh about it maybe for a week or so, and then they'll forget and move on.
Something new,
and move on to something new. So I was like, let's just do it. So that's why we're here. So back to kind of JJ. So he, you know, got through all that. Bakery's doing good. What does the future look like for JJ? You mentioned he was kind of in a driving.
Yeah, he's in a
School
driving
and
program
stuff.
in Springfield. So he does training twice a week through the summer, and we don't know how much he'll need, how long it'll take. We're just figuring it out as we go, narrowing down the hand controls that he'll need. I was able to get a grant for him to get a newer van that he will fit in, and
Just
the
saw
hand
that.
controls will work in. We were driving an older van that we were thankful to have, but it was difficult to fit him inside of it, and it was not equipped for him to be able to drive it.
Yeah.
So this one will be his when he's driving. And he told me, he said, Mom, you could just get rid of your car because my van's really nice. And I said, no, that's your van. I'm going to keep my car. So, but hopefully by his senior year, or pretty close into it, he'll be driving himself.
Are you excited to like go back to
What
your
parent isn't excited when their kid starts driving? Like, well, I shouldn't say that because a lot of people are nervous, but it gives them the freedom to kind of figure out things and figure out life. And, you know, there's nerves that, you know, maybe he'll wreck again. Well, you can't live like that. You know, you get bucked off the horse, you got to get back on, and you just got to keep going. So he's nervous about it, but once he gets in there and starts driving, he's driving the training car right now. And once he starts doing it, he seems like he's doing really well. So.
Oh, I just had Miles, our middle son, of course, the middle child. He flipped his go-kart the other day, it was a couple weeks ago, and my daughter and my oldest son's girlfriend was in it with him. So it's just kind of laying there on its side, and we run over there and we get them out of it and everything. And the first thing my daughter says is we're like pulling her out of this thing, and she looks at her mom and she goes, "Sell it." She's like, "Get rid of it." And I was like, no. We're going to make sure you guys are all good, and then you're going to get back in and you guys are going to go out
That's
there.
the first
and
thing
you're
you need
gonna
to do,
have
right?
fun.
Yeah, I flipped a 4-wheeler once with both of my kids on it with me. They'll never let me live it down. I broke my oldest arm.
Well, I remember growing up riding dirt bikes and stuff. It was always kind of like when you wreck and you know something's happened, it's like just get back on and keep going, and you just don't even think about the pain. Like just keep going, just keep going. And I don't know. I've used that for a lot of as you go into business and things like that, and you get knocked down and get told no and stuff like that. It's like, all right, well, I'll just keep going and go somewhere else and do that.
Yeah.
So, as far as Wildflower Baking goes, what what are some things, how can people find you? What are some things that you're looking forward to? Some new things that you're doing? Kind of talk to us a little bit about it.
So main way to find me is through Facebook, Wildflower Baking. There's lots of them out there, but if you look around, you'll probably find it. It's the main
Yours is
contact.
spelled flour.
Yes, like baking
yes.
flour, Flour. So a lot of people mix that up as well. And of course, my brain, I'm like, it can't be Wildflower Bakery because I don't have a bakery. I do it out of my home. So it has to be baking. So anyway, Wildflower Baking. I do it out of my home. There's, guidelines through Missouri Cottage Law that I work under. I don't have any plans for anything new. Honestly, what I'm doing is working well. So there's no reason to throw any hiccup in it. I am always open to custom things. I had one customer that said I believe it was his grandma or his wife's grandma made a coconut cream cake, and he wanted to see if I could make something similar. And I said, you got it. And I did. And it was wonderful. So, I'm always open to something that's custom,
Gotcha.
That's going to help somebody else out, make them happy, anything like that. So
that's really cool.
Do you have any specialties that you work on?
It depends on who you ask what is special. But in my family, they would say the cream horns are the best.
Okay.
So that's what everybody tends to lean towards.
No, I think I had one the other day.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law brought some to one of our parties, I believe, and I'm like, yeah,
Listen,
that's like.
I was
Yeah.
a little disappointed today because I thought
Having
having her on the first podcast, there'd be something in the middle of the table here. But
you thought wrong.
yeah,
prop, right?
No.
Yeah.
I've heard the cream horns as well are pretty popular. But honestly, everything, from what I hear, everything that you've done a few cookie classes through our church and stuff like that. You do those as well. So as we kind of wrap things up, everything that you kind of been through, all the struggles, all the ups and downs and everything, talking to young women, talking to, well, even, women your age and older and stuff that just aren't.
Are you saying I'm not young?
Haven't quite. I said or older, so you're like in the middle. You're like in the middle right there. What is something you would kind of like, what advice would you give them if they're trying to kind of take that next step, or if they're going through something right now, if they're going through a struggle right now? What's kind of that advice that you would give them to kind of overcome and take that leap?
It's simple. I really feel like it's the obvious and we miss it so much, but it is taking care of yourself. And that's the only way I've made it through the things that I've made it through is making sure that I was healthy, mind, body, spirit, all of those things. And it doesn't mean that it looks like anyone else. It has to be what's good for you. And what's good for me isn't good for somebody else. But I have found that having certain things that I do every day, some people say, get up and make your bed, and that makes you feel like you've accomplished something. I don't care if my bed is made, but I do want to take a cold shower first thing in the morning because it's something difficult. And that means that I've overcome something difficult already. And I think about how many difficult things that people face in this world. JJ faces difficult things every day. And if I can face difficult things and overcome them, it just teaches me that I do have the strength to continue to do those difficult things. Just remembering that you got to take care of yourself first. And it is not selfish. It is self-preservation. And you have to be able to take care of yourself. I have a really good friend, and I would recommend that anyone who is going through a difficult time confide in a friend that you can trust. When JJ got hurt, I was on day 67 of 75 Hard. It's a huge program. And anyone listening, if you haven't done it, look into it. You can do it. It's not physical fitness. It's a mental toughness challenge. I was on day 67 when JJ got hurt. And a friend of mine was talking to me, and I said, I'm just going to quit because I can't do this when I'm staying with him in the hospital. And she said, how on earth are you ever going to take care of him if you can't take care of yourself?
Wow.
And it was like, ouch, that hurt. But she was right. And so day 8 of staying in the hospital with him, I finished that program
Yeah.
for the first time.
That's really good.
Self-care, not selfish, I think
Correct.
is really important to distinguish. And I think a lot of moms really struggle with that because you think I'm supposed to take care of the kids and I'm supposed to do this and cook and clean and do all this stuff. But there has to be that moment of your self-care and taking care of you. Because you can't take care of everybody else if you're not healthy and functioning at full capacity.
Right.
So
It
that's
reminds
really
me
good.
of a book I'm reading right now. It's actually called Conversations with God. And it's based on a lot of the principles like you're talking about, self-care, self-love. And that, I think a lot of people have a hard time with that right now because, they talk down to themselves. They're, and like you said, being selfish is really what's needed sometimes to overcome the issues in life. So,
Yeah.
for sure.
And having the right people, you talk about your friend and stuff like that, having the right people. We were just talking in the office the other day about we don't want to drag people down. If somebody's doing better than us, like I'm not the type of person, I know Darren's not the type of person to look at that and be like, how can I bring them back to my level?
Right.
We want to kind of bring people up with us. Like if we're rising, we want to bring them to rise with us, and we want to encourage those that are ahead of us. But I think we do get wrapped up in the world of we have to be better, and sometimes it's easier to pull them down than it is to lift them
you're
up.
comparing yourself to everybody else around you.
Yeah. And you really just need to compare yourself to yourself. You
Right.
can't.
Or what
you ca-
God's vision for you is.
Right. And you
Yeah.
can't even in your own life, you can't look back and try to become who you were. You got to look forward and become someone better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Mindy, thank you so much for being on the very first Limitless Living podcast. We're really excited that you were on here and that you told your story. I've learned a lot about you. I've known you since we were going to church together, so it's just been kind of the second part of all of that. When you mentioned to me kind of the previous part, I was kind of surprised by it. So thank you so much for coming on here and being
thanks for
so
having me.
open and everything. And hopefully you get a few orders through your baking and
Sounds
you
good.
stay just as busy.
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.